Greetings to all and welcome to Season 4, Episode 1 of Losing Our Marbles, a talk for two. We are finally back in the groove of things, full-time streaming, full steam ahead. And what better way than to kick this off than with one of the long-running supporters and could vaguely describe as collaborator, CCKinnison!
Very vaguely. Thank you for having me.
Collaboration with a comfortable distance.
That's a good way to put it. Hello, everybody.
Good to have you here. Hope life has been treating you well.
Reasonably well.
Good.
You know, you get this old and medical crap starts happening, but for the most part, good.
So I hear. I'm approaching 35. I'm beginning to worry.
Flip the numbers.
Well, for those of you who don't know, we are going to be going for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how everything goes. I'll more or less lead the conversation for the first half. CCKinnison will more or less lead the conversation for the second half. And there'll be a midstream mix-up of sorts. We'll see. Might be some mini motorways in there. Who knows? You never know. It's anyone's game. Let's break it down and get into it.
You got it.
Question numero uno for you, sir. What is your favorite track piece?
You realize you're asking a non-builder this.
Right. That's why your input is so valuable.
Oh, okay. Favorite anything, it's always a problem because, like, favorite track piece for what purpose?
Right.
You know, favorite movie, yeah, I've got a favorite musical maybe, but favorite movie, that's favorite track piece. Chad, I think.
Chad?
I have to go with Chad. Chad's can be very creative.
They can, and to that effect, they're also they're just increasing the slope on them. So if you put them at a 10-degree slope instead of the default 5-degree slope, the path around is actually quite reliable. So it's marbles that go in the middle get caught, and the marbles that hit and go around the outside go through pretty quickly, which as a basic scattering mechanic is actually quite useful in a lot of builds. And certainly less lethal than the Steve or the double inverse motion enclosed dishwasher that will clip marbles out of it. So it's definitely a good iteration on that kind of a piece, I would say. Of all the Steve pieces, that's probably the most reliable, for sure.
Now that they've broken well, who knows? Maybe it'll be fixed tomorrow? Whenever. Shortly. The Coliseum or the Steve-O or whatever you want to call that.
Yes, we'll
with
see.
the doors that stopped working.
All sorts of things stopped working. It was very weird. We had the switches stopped working. They didn't have collision until they triggered for the first time.
Yeah.
And then the Coliseum doors. And it's interesting.
Well, and then there's the start piece that's still swirling.
That a marble can go straight through.
Accelerated funnel or whatever you want to call that.
Yep. All very interesting, I find. But yeah, no.
It's just you start trying to get computers to do physics and shit gets weird.
Chad is a good one. Well, to be fair, it's not the computer's fault, right? It's a simplified physics.
Well, absolutely, but that's the problem. You can't get and get any response out of it. You can only get so much fidelity in the simulation.
Correct. There's any shortcut you take will manifest as a glitch, basically.
Right. Absolutely not the programmer's fault,
Yep.
but or maybe it's the programmer's fault, but it's not an avoidable fault. You know, it's going to show up somewhere.
Yep. Let's see. So going in that line of tiny things going wrong. I was actually doing a little bit of exploratory research today, and strangely enough, even Veritasium released a recent video, I think either today or yesterday on it, in that the cosmic radiation can cause those single bit switches in any electronic, and planes being much closer to the magnetosphere than most other electrical data tend to be more prone to these issues. And it doesn't happen very often because most of the equipment is well protected, but there have been times in the past where planes dip down a full magnitude of altitude almost instantaneously because they get a bit switch in their programming. And the one worst case scenario was like a negative -0.8 Gs up. So because the plane just suddenly descended because the autopilot computer had a bit switch on it and had to go for an emergency landing. So that was always fun like that. What have been some interesting, weird phenomena you've experienced in your past as a air traffic controller? Things that either defied explanation or only ever happened once.
Well, of course, there's people who see things out there and they say, hey, we've got lights out here. Is there traffic? There's nobody out there. I have never had anyone officially file a UFO report through me on the sector.
Mm-hmm.
I know people who have. One guy actually ended up on the Art Bell show because the plane in question, they did all the paperwork. They filed everything, and it became moderately well known. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So the controller ended up calling into Art Bell and ending up on the air for a little while. Most of the weird things I've seen have involved human error somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Somebody is looking at something and saying, okay, this guy has traffic here. I need to send him, but I can't do it for 2 minutes.
Right.
15 seconds later, they look back around the scope and say, oh, I need to start this guy down. And you just hope that the guy sitting next to him smacks him on the shoulder when he calls that plane and starts to descend it. I have seen that both successfully get stopped and not successfully get stopped.
Makes sense.
In which case, there's a lot of paperwork. Because the planes are going to notice really quickly when another one starts showing up. They now have a system in the plane. Basically, their own radar. They like to call it the fish finder, which is incredibly annoying, but that's about what the display looks like.
Oh, okay. It's right. Makes sense.
It's a very simplified radar display that only gives them a very short-range view.
Right.
But it looks a lot like a fish finder. So they see it, and the commercial airliners, at least, if that thing tells them move for this plane, they are required to obey it and tell us that they're doing this.
Got it.
So, actually, I should say tell those guys, because I'm not doing that anymore.
It's always a bit of a relief. I mean, I was doing produce manager in Colorado for 4 years, and being that middle line, like I wasn't a store manager, so I wasn't part of the corporate really, but I wasn't just a grunt employee, so I was always that blurred boundary between corporate and personnel kind of thing. And there's always a lot of headbutting in that kind of a position. And then I gave them 6 weeks notice because I already knew they were probably going to put my assistant manager into the manager position, which I was against from the very beginning because he just did not have leadership quality to him. It just wasn't his thing. So I spent 6 weeks trying to get everything as self-sufficient as possible. Had the whole last week, I was like, I'm not here. I'm just an extra pair of hands. You're just basically just going to run everything for a week, and I'm just going to be here to put out fires. And sales dropped 5% below the previous year. So how we did sales is same month compared to the prior year. So if you're in April 2021, it was compared to April 2020. Right. And I had been never under 10% up, usually closer to 15% up, as high as 22% up in a single month. And they were 5% down. So it was a 15% loss at least in sales in the first month that he took over. It's just like
Well, I can only hope they got better after
I'm,
that.
I'm
But
sure they've sorted it out and either found a new way or stabilized the situation. But it's just one of those situations where it's like you know what's gonna happen, and you're just glad you're not there anymore, right? So, do you consider that more Schadenfreude, or would you consider that more valid, like seeking validation? What do you think? Is it the knowing you were right about the situation, or is it the glad
definitely
someone
some of
else
the
has to
first.
pick up the
There's a
problem?
huge, I told you so in all of that. Um, but there's also, wow, which one is more? I don't know. How much are you, it's like, where is your happiness coming from? From the fact that you called it right, or from the fact that, I guess it would depend, did you enjoy the job while you had it?
Um, Up until the point
And
where I
how
decided
was
to
it? Was it a
leave, yeah.
good employer?
They were. They started as 60 stores, I believe, when I got there, maybe 80 stores when I started working for them. And they were at
Okay, so
over
if
100
you liked working for them and all that, then it's probably more an "I told you so"
right.
moment than a "Yeah, let me sit back and watch this place explode."
But that was also
Um,
the terms of leaving is they had gone from a healthy company to a public company to a corporation kind of thing and all the
oh
changes
dear.
that go with that. So it's the reason I left is because it became too corporate of an environment. So
Well, can I tell you why you're enjoying it? No, I guess I'd just go with 50-50 on that one. That's really your call is that what part of that you were getting a kick out of.
what about
But
for
there's got to be a big element of, yep, called that one.
yeah, yep. Did you have any like interesting power struggles when you were doing your thing?
Power struggles, not really. Uh, our line of command was pretty defined. When you were sitting on a sector, you were in charge. You were the final
Got it.
authority,
Right.
except if management came over to you and said, "Do this," and you say, "No, that's not going to work." And they say, "Do this." There is an article of the contract you can invoke that puts them in responsible for the sector, and you do what they say.
Right.
I never had to do that.
That's good.
Closest I got to power struggles is I was working sectors completely swamped. They've got two people plugged in helping me. Usually you can work a scope by yourself. If it gets busy, they put in a second person. When they put in the third person, you are officially down the crapper
Right.
or headed there. So I'm sitting there working my butt off, two other people trying to follow me. Relatively new supervisor comes over, reaches in front of me and points at something in the middle of the scope and says, "Are you watching these two?" And all they said was "these two." I didn't know who they were pointing
Right.
to. They didn't
Right.
give me a call sign. They didn't say anything. I said, "If you do not remove that finger, I'm snapping it off. It's mine." And hand disappeared. Supervisor left. I got back to work. Um,
That's a good one. I like that one.
yeah,
I like that one. That's
there
good.
is not time. One of the things I learned in training is they said in the ATC manual, the book that we use is officially called the 7110.65 with a letter tacked onto the end, and the letter rotates as they put out a new edition of it.
Got it.
And one of my trainers told me early on, you call another controller to ask for something or to tell them to do something. And most trainees start out by when you call somebody and the other guy says, "Okay, I'll do whatever," you say thank you and you hang up. My trainer told me, "You're wasting time." Nowhere in the book does it say be polite. You be professional, but please and thank you are not words that you get in air traffic control
Right.
from any side of any communication. If you have to say please, you're doing it wrong.
And probably more
It's-
so the situation with nautical logistics than aero logistics would be like usually like military involvement. I assume you didn't have too much crossover between military airspace and commercial airspace in your experience.
Actually, not true. We have When the military is out training or something, they have designated areas, and we make sure that nobody else is in the area. They have sent out notices to let general aviation pilots know that this area is going to be hot at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep people out of their airspace. We clear them in. When they're ready to come out, they call us before they come out, and we clear them out of the area back to wherever they're going. If they're just flying point to point, here to Andrews, they fly like anybody else. They fly on the airways. They fly at the altitudes we tell them. They do what we tell them. When they're on a specific mission, it's a little different, like I said. And when you're watching one of those areas, you are blocking that chunk of airspace, and nobody goes in.
Right.
And if they start coming out of it, you call them and say, get your butt back in there. And potentially, if it gets bad enough, that can be a pilot deviation like anybody else, and that's bad news for everybody.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things people generally overlook is that, like why flying cars and stuff like that haven't really caught on as quickly as they thought they would 50, 60 years ago. It's like 3-dimensional space being navigated compared to 2-dimensional space is... Humans aren't built for that.
Well,
birds are built for that, not humans.
There is the requirements we have for separation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to put people in flying cars, we have to come up with a whole new system. For instance, right here around Dallas-Fort Worth, in close on the local radar, so the closest that we can get at the same altitude or within 1,000 feet of the altitude,
right,
is 3 miles.
Yeah.
So imagine driving your car down the street with a 3-mile gap between you and the car in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
That's how many people we could put in the air.
Right.
And the next cross street is 3 miles that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, we need a whole new system. Basically, when we get the AI for driving down pat and it does not cause any more accidents, then we can start looking at adding a third dimension to that. And maybe you can get flying cars. Until then, I don't think they're going to be a big thing.
Yeah, I think automated flying cars would be the fastest way to get that going for sure. Because you can divide people up by altitudes and whatnot, but it's the transitions, right? It's getting up to those altitudes, getting down from those altitudes.
Well, it's not just that. The altitude blocks are 1,000 feet apart.
Mm-hmm.
And no plane, you're not going to get a car probably to fly over 10 or 12,000 feet.
Right.
You don't have a plane going above, except for a very few jets, about 41,000 feet is the maximum. And then you've got to leave room, of course, for, eastbound guys at one altitude, westbound at the next altitude. Mm-hmm. Typically.
And then whatever storm's rolling through at the time.
Yeah, well, you get that. People say, we don't want to go that way. We need to turn left. Well, I got traffic to the left. Can you go the other way? Mm-hmm. And sometimes the answer to that is no. Weather days are not fun. No. Or they're a great deal of fun, depending upon how you look at it, but they get really busy.
Yep, I can imagine. As I know with, I guess it's easier in national airspace because it's all the same country. I guess with water it becomes more that blurred international waters issue. So like when you have two different authorities trying to navigate two ships passing each other or a civilian craft and a military craft interacting, there's always like disagreeing laws as to who does what and who has the right of way.
For airspace, that's mostly been hashed out. Mm-hmm. If you're flying over the Atlantic to England, for example, now I haven't worked oceanic airspace, but as I understand it, there are set routes. There's like 4 main routes between here and England. And you get assigned on one of those routes and you get assigned an altitude and you make a radio check-in every 50 miles, every 100 miles, every whatever it is. And at this point, you call this frequency on the other end and you're finally talking to somebody over in England.
Right.
So it's still very prescribed. The plane doesn't just head that way.
Right.
You never do that.
Yeah, so that's basically what I was kind of comparing with my limited knowledge on the subject. That I'm more familiar with like boat travel than air travel, and boat travel always has a lot more complications in those situations. So
Right. The part of the change there is the relative speed of the boat compared to the distance, and the distance of vision
mhm.
is a lot slower than a plane.
Right. Although a boat can't quite change direction as well as a plane can. If it's
Uh,
once it's over a certain tonnage, it kind of just goes straight.
it does, but you still have, let's put it this way. We had a poster at work, and it was, the cockpit view looking out the window of, some airliner. And it said, somewhere in this picture is another airliner headed directly at you 8 seconds from impact. Can you find it?
Right.
And it's this tiny flippin' dot.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is, in the plane, by the time you can see it and recognize it's a plane, there is no time. It doesn't matter if the plane can turn, you can't turn it. You cannot react.
Right.
Which is what we were there for, was to keep that from happening.
Makes sense. Looks like we have some relative questions in chat. I usually save questions for the end for the Q&A section, but if they're relative to the topic on hand, no harm diving in. Either an explanation of what an X-plane interaction is, or touching on the subject of ATC versus EAA.
Okay, X-plane, if you mean, I'm not sure what he means by X-plane, Diablo Bob. Do you mean an experimental plane, or do you mean like some specific super high performance, like an SR-71 or something? Or I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the term. Remember, I've been retired for 5 years, so if they've recently been using this term, I'm not familiar with it. Now, EAA aircraft, again, hang on for a second. Let me check. Right, experimental. That's what I thought. Most experimental aircraft. Okay. In that case, the answer to that is yes, and I can't talk about it. We had a security clearance. I do not have a current security clearance, but it still applies. I will say that yes, I've talked to a U2. I have not talked to an SR-71, but I have talked to other aircraft in that family. Anything more recent than that? No comment. Let's see. Now, EAA aircraft, experimental aircraft, are usually either flying VFR, in which case we might be talking to them, but we're not actually issuing control instructions.
Right.
Or if they're flying IFR, they're flying with, exceptions and restrictions on their aircraft. Well, that too, Kira. But so, the aircraft, he may be certified to fly IFR, but maybe he's not certified to fly over 8,000 feet or over a certain speed, in which case we treat him like any other plane. Basically, we treat them as... now, I worked at center. I did not work at a tower. I did not work at approach control. If you know anything about aviation, if you don't, I can explain the three. But basically, when your captain says we've reached our cruising altitude of 32,000 feet, you're talking to a center somewhere in the United States. The other facilities work much closer in to the major airports, or in the case of a tower, actually right at the airport and maybe a few miles out. And we basically come down to VFR aircraft, IFR aircraft. That's all we care about. If somebody declares an emergency, they get precedence over everybody else. I don't care if it's a medical emergency or if a part of the plane just fell off. If you say emergency, I'm paying attention to you first and everybody else after you.
Makes sense.
That includes, in theory, Air Force One comes after an emergency. Now, granted, they come like almost right after an emergency, but they're actually still not top priority.
I imagine they're generally self-sufficient, right? So they might need certain like buffer protections, like no one too close or too far away. But other than that, I would imagine they're pretty self-sufficient, or it's all worked out ahead of time.
Well, their route is worked out. You do not take Air Force One and give them a shortcut, for
Yeah.
example. They fly the route that they filed, and it is planned, and people know that they're coming.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as much as possible, you try and keep people away from them. But if it's busy, people fly. They get their standard separation, and you just watch. Regional or center, I was only ever center. I worked Fort Worth Center for 25 years. Went there straight out of the academy and retired out of there. Never moved.
There you go.
So I can't really address the other facilities. I can say I had a blast. That's the question I always get, Diablo Bob, and the answer is yes and no. I worked the mid shift that night. I got off work at 6:30 in the morning Texas time, which was about an hour before everything started, an hour and a half. I was at home asleep when my phone rings. And it's my sister on the East Coast. So I wake up and she never calls. So I'm like, yeah, what's up? And she's like, are you watching the news? And it's like, no, I got off work an hour and a half ago. And she's like, turn on the news. So I start looking for the TV remote. And I'm like, okay, yeah, great. What channel? And she's just like, turn on the TV.
Any channel.
That woke me up. And I spent the rest of the day staring at the TV in shock, pretty much like everybody else. Air traffic, I will say ATC that day did a fantastic job because the plan to get all of the aircraft on the ground as fast as possible to clear the airspace, we'd always talked about it. Mm-hmm. We were not trained for it because you can't train for that.
Yeah,
we were told this plane
you don't have trial day where you ground 2,000 planes.
It had never been implemented. And the guys working that day did a fantastic job.
Mm-hmm. I've seen animations of it where they have the plane trackers and they show like half hour before and then they time lapse to a half hour after, and it's like everything's normal, super spider webbed, and it's like shut down, and then it's like empty.
Yep. First thing is nobody gets off the ground, and second thing is, okay, how far are you from your destination? Is there any closer airport that you can land at? Mm-hmm. In a couple of cases is it a place where you can physically land the aircraft even if it can't take off again from that runway?
Right. So get down in the cornfield and get out of there.
No. It's at an airport. But there was one case I know of where an aircraft was coming from somewhere in the Rocky Mountains or the Midwest. I want to say Denver, but I'm not sure about that. But they're going past the Rockies on the way to Las Vegas. And I do not remember the flight number. But they were told, you are cleared to this little airport in Colorado or Utah, to land. Mm-hmm. And the captain looks that up and he's like, we're not going there. And he's like, sir, you are going to this airport and you are going to land there. Your next communication will be from an F-16 if you decline this clearance. They went there and landed. Hey, Andy.
What's up? And so, I guess, I'm assuming the point being a plane can land in a shorter land strip than it can take off at?
Yes.
So what is the
You
protocol?
brakes, you put on full flaps for the brakes. You can stop the thing in a relatively short distance. Mm-hmm. Particularly, the heavier it is loaded, the harder it is to take off.
Right.
I know of one case, was before I started there, but they were still telling the story. We had a little airport east of Oklahoma City, about 40 miles, a place called... can't remember if they did that at Shawnee or Ada. It was one of two airports. But they had a 727, I think it was, that had an emergency, mechanical emergency, was not going to make it to one of the major airports, needed a place to land. Place had enough runway to get them on the ground. The company had to ship in crews to strip the plane down, take out all the seats. They had already bussed out all the passengers and luggage, and they put on just enough gas for the thing to make it to Oklahoma City. And they had to fly an empty plane out and land it at the nearest major airport because that was the only way to get it back off the ground.
Right.
If they hadn't been able to do that, the next choice is cut it up and truck it off.
I'm about to say, do they have to truck it somewhere, and then I imagine you have to break it down, take the wings off at least?
Well, if they had to land, say, a 747 there, that's not getting back off the ground in that kind of runway distance.
Right. So, crazy stuff.
That must have been a very small plane, Indy. You do not take a 7.2 off of, say, a golf
Nope.
course.
Well,
Something like that.
speaking of
isn't
which,
happening.
I don't know if you heard, Ocean City, New Jersey, where I was last located, we have those banner planes
Oh yeah.
that run by, and I'm sure you're familiar. Not much more than literally a bucket of bolts. It's like it's an engine with some foam attached to it. Essentially.
Yeah, it's a lot like some crop dusters. It's a
Yeah.
very old plane, but
Yeah.
it still gets in the air.
Yeah. And there was one, the engine shut off mid-flight. The guy's over the bay, so he can't make a ground landing because it's all wetland. So there's nothing to land on. You would just sink. So he lands on the main bridge, and the bridge it's only 4 lanes wide, 2 in, 2 out. And he managed to land the plane amid traffic. This is a high tourist vacation spot. Found a break in traffic, lined up to it, landed in it, and managed to pull over into the shoulder. So there was still a lane of traffic that could get by on the left side. And the kid was like 18 years old. And he glider landed a plane on a busy
And
bridge.
he did a hell of a job, that
was-
sounds like.
It was absolutely amazing. Yeah. So I would imagine they just kind of chopped that plane up and brought it to the scrapyard rather than taking it back to the airport at that point.
50-50. Because if you can get it on a flatbed, if you could land it there, you can drive it off of there.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got to get, a flatbed tow truck out there, basically, to wheel the thing up.
Mm-hmm. But if it's already not working, might be cheaper to just get the next used
Maybe
one.
if it's just an engine problem, it gets fixed. It's like
Maybe.
taking your car to the shop.
Maybe, yeah. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Well, we're pretty into the weeds here on the airport. Anything else we can get into along these lines of conversation?
Oh, jeez.
Hot air balloons? Any experience with hot air balloons?
Not directly. The big hot air balloon festival was west of Fort Worth Center in Albuquerque
Okay.
every year. And we get all kinds of warnings for that stuff going that way. We did have weather balloons launched every now and then.
Oh.
And those are a little disturbing because they don't generally appear on radar.
Mm.
And they don't always have transponders attached to them. So it was launched from here, and there's where the winds are.
Right.
So you just start calling to the planes in the area, and you give an advisory. In this area, weather balloon ascending rapidly to whatever. And then when it gets up there, we get a notice that it has released its instrument payload, which basically means they just cut the balloon loose. The balloon goes
Right.
off somewhere, and now you have an instrument package dropping like a rock
Yeah.
until it hits the ground. And eventually we hear, okay, it's down, and we get to stop broadcasting about that. It's like trying to broadcast about a flock of birds around an airport. You just get to
Right.
tell them, hey guys, somewhere out here, keep an eye out.
Yeah.
I got no clue.
It's all like the falling rocks on a mountain highway. It's like if you see the falling rocks, it's too late to do anything about
Yeah,
it.
get your brakes or accelerate, make your best guess.
Yeah.
Dodge.
So, and Diablo Bob, like I said, feel free to stick around after the show. We do Q&A, and you can gush until CCKinnison falls asleep.
That could be a while. I'm usually up until about 2 in the morning.
Ooh. Let's see. Where else? You got anything relevant in this conversation to throw back my way?
Ooh,
Conversation.
boy. Of relevant to air traffic or I don't know. You mentioned you were a produce manager, I think you said.
Mm-hmm.
What's your degree you're training in?
Entomology. I did 3 years entomology, University of Delaware. So, kind of had to choose between all my loves at the time. Leaving high school, I was into music composition, choral music, directing, auxiliary percussion performance. Was looking at piano, looking at meteorology. I actually did take 2 semesters of meteorology in college, 4.0 both times. So I already knew everything. I already taught myself everything they wanted to teach us. So I had meteorology, kind of like storm chasing was kind of something on my radar. And then I had like botany, meteorology, or entomology, something along those lines. And career-wise, it seemed like entomology would be the most career applicable because that's tied into agriculture and horticulture. So those actually have established fields, whereas, not as easy to find a job where people are willing to pay you to fly a truck into a tornado or something along those lines.
Well, if you want to work for the government, I'm sure NOAA is still hiring for that.
I'm sure. So it was kind of just having to choose the most career-related study, and wasn't really a big fan of the collegiate atmosphere because I was expecting to be more, I guess, philosophical in its construction, but it was really more just the same of regurgitation of facts and like, oh, all the stuff you want isn't until grad school. It's like, well, I'm not going to put up with this for 4 years for a piece of paper just to then be able to start doing what I wanted to do 4 years ago, right? It's just like, ugh. So
pretty much, unless you're going into, philosophy or something. Yeah.
Yep. So, and there's plenty that college is necessary for. So especially my go-to examples like doctors is like, you need to learn every muscle and bone in the human body if you're going to be a doctor, and you can't do that yourself. That has to be a collegiate, indoctrinated experience. But if you're just going to be a manager for a sporting goods store, you don't really need a college education. Like maybe a business minor or something, but most of that stuff you can learn better on the job than you can at a college. So.
Yeah, and our society has gotten really married to, do you have that piece of paper?
Yep.
Fortunately, air traffic is not one of those things. About once a year, the FAA opens up a no experience, no knowledge bid. They just had it at the end of July, start of August for this year. I posted about it on my Discord and a couple of other places. If you are under, I'll tell you right now, folks, if anybody out there, if you're under 30, the hiring age is 31, but they're probably not going to open it again until next year, and you have any interest, keep an eye out for that bid, because they will hire anybody off the street. They will check you take a test. They see if you have mathematics skills, some 3D reasoning. If you don't, then no problem. They don't hire you. If you do, they hire you, and they train the shit out of you. They do not just let you start talking to planes. You will go through
Really?
a lot of training, and they will let you do that when they say you're safe.
I like it.
But I heard about the job, I heard about the test, random chance, honestly. I told people some. One of my friends, his father worked for the Texas Employment Administration. I'm trying to remember what the A is in TEA. Duh. And they helped match people up with jobs. Now, he wasn't officially looking for a job for me, but the bid for air traffic came across his desk.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the first person in my family to go into air traffic, and he knew and had heard that, so he told me about this test, and I went and took it. And I got hired. And, almost random chance, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I loved that job. Didn't necessarily love everybody I worked with. Didn't always love management. The job, the talking to planes, fantastic.
Good stuff.
Diablo Bob, no, because the mandatory retirement age from ATC is 56, and they want you to be able to get in a 25-year career before that. Technically above age 50, 20 years is retirement, but they're not going to waiver that age. On the other hand, if you're 40, talk to your kids. Get them looking at it now.
Cool stuff. But so entomology, roughly agricultural related. Been working horticultural retail for 17 years on and off. So it's just something I know, something I do to help cushion the bills, as it were.
Oh yeah. Well, anything you need to go into pilot
I
training.
say you need to be a pilot for that situation. Cool. Let's see what else I got on my little list here. Coming in closer to 40. I guess we could do a quick detour back to marbles before we sprint away again.
Sure.
It's kind of a two-parter question. We can tackle it however you want. Would you ever grind and or compete in marbles?
I have tried. So the answer is no, not again. I tried to go on the marbles grind to see what it would be like to try and advance up the leaderboard, keeping 4, 6, however many streams open at a time. And this was before tilting. It's not before tilting existed, but it was before tilting was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is still no. I went completely nuts trying to do it. And it wasn't entertaining.
Yeah.
I would rather sit in 1 or 2 streams and engage with the streamer and have fun. I want to chatter and talk when I'm in a chat channel. I don't want to sit there and type exclamation point play and jump to the next tab. At that point you have successfully turned marbles into a job. Oh, goody. And what's more, a job you're not getting paid for.
It's true.
I
don't know. You can profit it, but you would have to be on the streamer side.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about profiting from the racer side.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Because that was a bit of a strategy. I'm going to say before season 10, probably closer into season 15 or so. But definitely before season 10, because the community was smaller, if you were a racer grinder and you turned your stream on, everyone showed up. Because everyone knew your name because you were in every marble stream. There wasn't energy at the time, so you could literally just be spam dropping everywhere. And the really good ones had enough sound on to be interactive on a lot of the streams that they were dropping in. So, that's kind of how Steam and Pollock and Grandma's Cookies kind of took off. Is they were everywhere as grinders, so when they started streaming, people were like, oh, they stream, let me check this out, right? And it's just like this, basically serves as free advertising as a grinder. Well, it's not free, you're working your butt off, but
right.
it does kind of work as an advertising for your channel, but they were very unique individuals.
Seasons, I guess it's punish yourself for a season, get up into the top end of the leaderboard, and then maybe people know your name when you're streaming next season. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely a payoff. And that's something that a lot of streamers and grinders, I think, don't realize. I know GJC was kind of the first big example, unfortunately. He got his top 3 and then took the next season off. So basically any clout he had earned with his 2-month-long grind, he kind of threw away, unfortunately, because no one came back because there wasn't a stream to come back to.
Right.
So I think a lot of people have kind of learned from that lesson, unfortunately. And GJC always has kind of volunteered to be the canary in the coal mine, with the DMCA stuff that's happening and with the grinding stuff and YouTube and all. He's always willing to throw himself out there and be the first one to fall so that the rest of us can benefit. So always major respect for GJC and what he does. I don't think people, because he's not as popular, I don't think people realize how much impact he has had on the community. But he's done a lot of the hard lessons so that others didn't have to, for sure. And that follow-up season to whatever you do for your grind is very important, for sure. So,
I can see that.
I guess the question is, should I go for a tilt grind next season? So just wipe away the comeback and just tilt for 12 hours every day and go for number 1.
Well, you'll get the points. You'll get, I mean, is it wipe away the progress? I mean, you will be streaming. You will have people in your stream. I don't know how much interaction you get in the tilting. You know, how much do people chatter to you while you're tilting?
I mean, I can
I
get
know
some
that when
pretty
I
good
sit
stuff,
there and
though.
try and hold a conversation while tilting, that's when I die.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's
I
when I
definitely
wipe the
don't
map.
do as well. That's for sure. Yeah. You have to choose between being good and being entertaining. It's not really possible to do both at the same time, unfortunately. But I would have done it this season, but you know, let's not go into that.
Yeah. It is what it is.
It is indeed.
Or
Indeed.
was what it was. Anyway, yeah.
Everyone wants more builder streams. I mean, there will be many builder streams. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. Plenty of builder streams coming up.
Well, you have to have pachinko first, Indy. So, no.
We're there's already a command for that, Twisted Indie. Come on. We've been there, we've done that. We don't do the same gig, we do the next gig. That's one of our codes. Well, at this point, you can throw in one last big question, or we can go straight into the midstream mix-up. Up to you.
Me throwing a big question. Well, geez. Let's throw in a little question instead. Completely out of nowhere, has nothing to do with anything we've been talking about.
Best kind.
Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and Guam. Statehood or not, and why for each?
I think the answer to that lies into the restructuring of governance overall. I think in light of the internet being a thing, and in light of all of the equality in citizenship that we have been able to improve since the founding of the country, we are well overdue for our third constitutional convention. And I think deconstructing a two-party system into a state-based party system, either regional or individual, would be beneficial. And I think to that respect, should be possible to have a way to assign both Senate and the House proper representation. So, me personally, I don't think Washington, D.C. should be its own district. I think it should be part of Maryland. I don't see a reason for it to be isolated. Like, I understand that in order to have federal whatever, I guess they call it manifest destiny or something. But in order to have that federal ownership, it can't be a part of a state, I guess. But I don't see why it can't just be a city as part of Maryland and just assign the population to Maryland.
Okay, so that's a DC no. What about Puerto Rico and Guam?
Puerto Rico and Guam, I mean, country was founded on no taxation without representation, so we have to choose. Right? Either we have them as part of the country and they are involved in all parts of being part of the country, or they're not part of the country and they have independence. I think it's just the basic core American principle. Like, that's how America started. We were the taxed and unrepresented colony of England, and we started a whole country against it. So why would we do the same thing to other colonies? Doesn't make sense.
So what I'm hearing is yes.
It's a yes, but I think
Okay.
I think it's up for them to choose. You can say you can either claim independence and we'll just cut ties, or you can choose to be a part of it and we'll treat you like any other state. And that means they get 2 senators and 1 representative, I believe, according to population.
Actually, I think the minimum, regardless, is 3. But
well, it's 3 total because it's 1 representative, 2 Senate, right?
I thought it was 3 members to the House of Representatives.
Well, now I'm curious.
I don't think there's any state that currently only has 1.
We're getting to the bottom of this. I guess it would be Rhode Island, number of representatives. That would be the example, right? They have 2. Rhode Island has 2, so I think the minimum is 1.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. At least 1, yeah. It's a total of 3. You get 2 senators and a representative.
Okay.
So, and I think there are people who are. It is interesting, the comedy of it, right? Because I would assume it's mostly Republicans that are against it, because 2 senators or 4 senators that would likely both be Democratic would make them very unhappy, because it's a disproportionate representation of population, quote unquote, right? But the only reason they have as much power in this country as they do is because of the Electoral College, which is a disproportionate amount of representation per population. So it's it's one of those things you just have to laugh at. It's like, oh, so you don't think there should be a disproportionate representation with population? Okay, well then get rid of the Electoral College and good luck winning a popular vote in the next 20 decades. Like,
yeah,
it's
that's
comical.
Okay, I can't just say that's the Republicans as much as I want to agree with you. That's politics is my way or the highway, and when my way isn't necessarily consistent, no, we're going to do it this way instead, which is also still my way.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we ended up with a 2-party system in the first place. We weren't supposed to have political parties.
Right.
George Washington was famously against them.
Mm-hmm.
And instead we have 2 political parties with a lock on the system.
Yep. And my because it's very hard, other than just revolution, scrap it or all, start over kind of approach. But the one middle ground transitional option I was thinking could be with presidential elections to kind of get us started down our path. So have it that each state can elect a candidate rather than each party. And so your primaries become narrowing down the states to 3 or 4 candidates. And states can.
The problem is, how do you keep the parties from interfering and contributing to the state level elections?
I mean, at the present moment you couldn't, but if you restructured the whole thing, that it would be up to each state, right? So each state would decide how it goes about electing its candidate for president. And not to say you would have 50 candidates, multiple states could all elect the same person as their candidate. They wouldn't have to be a resident of that state, kind of a thing. So you would allow the states to decide.
How do you determine priority among those candidates? Do you then run another national level election?
Right, so the states have a time period to generate a candidate. So however they want to rule that, they'd rule it on their own. It's up to their discretion. And then there's a national primary, kind of like there still is with the 2-party system, where you just take a general popular vote and the top 3, 4, 5, however many you seem is a good number, go into the next election. And then for that following year, you have the main election between those remaining candidates.
Okay, I see where it's going. It seems like you're having basically two national level elections after the state. The problem is, I don't understand how you get the political parties out of this. They're going to do the same thing they do now.
Correct.
They're going to pick a candidate and push him in as many states as they can.
Right. And so as I said, that's why I say it's the only way I could see it being a transition to getting away from political parties. Because if you get that into a system, it would further expose the power political parties have, and then you can put in mandates that prevent it. Kind of like there used to be a couple more mandates on like financing, election campaigns. Obviously,
Yeah,
with the PACs and everything, it's become a giant mess. But there was a point where they were like, "Oh, this is a problem. We need to stop it," and you pass legislation that says you can't donate gobs of money to a politician. So I would imagine in the goal of smoother transition, aside from revolution, something like that would further expose the need to remove political parties, and then you could pass further legislation once you've established that state-based rather than party-based election.
Well, theoretically, as you said, the way to avoid revolution, the next step forward, is another constitutional convention.
Yes.
Because the constitutional convention, and that's the problem is that is why no one will call one, because everything's on the table, and there is just no way in hell. Oh my God.
What bothers me the most is that, and I say this generalizing, I'm sure there are exceptions, but my biggest problem today is that no major government has been constructed since global access to the internet has been around. So there isn't a government based around the idea of instant communication. And every government has loosely adapted into the world of instant communication, but you still have these huge hurdles that aren't going anywhere, like copyright law and physical double redundancies for verifying information, and thinking that a piece of paper is more reliable than 8 bits in a computer chip. And like, no major system of government has developed or built off of the concept of instant communication and the technology we have today. And it could be so much easier to run a country that builds from that foundation rather than fighting that foundation, in my opinion.
In the defense of the governments at this point, I would point to like every software security flaw and every hacker out there. If you gave them a government as a target, a major government as a target, that would get ugly fast.
Right, but that's also already happening, right? How many attacks have we had on our electrical grids and
Right. But if you
like
say
that.
now that your government relies primarily on this electronic medium and electronic records and not on the paper backups, so if an identity gets stolen, you can't go back and look at the paper records and say, yes, these are my thumbprints, this is me.
But
Whoever else is saying they're me is not.
You could, though, because information is still stored physically. You can run digital backups, so you can check that information through time. And additionally, I think you just highlighted the biggest problem, right? The reason we're so prone to these attacks is because our government doesn't take them as seriously as they need to, because it doesn't see itself as relying on it doesn't even recognize the internet as a utility, right? It's like, let's not kid ourselves. Internet is a utility. You need it as much as you need water and electricity in this country, especially.
These days, yes.
So the fact that we're not taking it seriously has caused us to be as vulnerable as we are to these attacks, either through social media or through our utility grids or whatever. So again, going into what you just highlighted, we would take it more seriously. We would have a much larger task force assigned, take the, 60-70% of our budget that's spent on military every year, and instead of devoting that to physical forces, you devote it to cyber forces, right? We would be untouchable nearly in our cyber defenses if we devoted half as much as we do to physical military as we did to cyber military. So
Fair enough.
I think that's kind of what I'm touching on. Is that's the problem? Is governments are not embracing the instant digital communication, and I would argue it's to the detriment of every nation that doesn't. So, yeah. I don't even remember what the question was, but we got to a really good conversation point. So
Well, the original question started to do with additional statehood, I think.
Oh yeah, statehood. All right, so we're loosely related. Loosely
the hard
related.
left at Albuquerque.
Yeah. No, we're still in New Mexico. We're good. All right, I'm gonna see if I can pop something up here real quick. I was fooling around with some stuff last night, and I would love to see your take on it. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pop in you, I think. Can we? Oh yeah, we're gonna add. I guess it counts as a window capture guest cam. There it is. There you. Oh, look at him. Look at him. So handsome. All right. I had an idea a long time ago. Oh, I should probably first we got to do the actual. It's the midstream mix-up! Yo! Yeah! We got there. All right. That was supposed to be the transition into this scene, but we skipped a step. It's okay. It's been a couple months since I last did this. All right, CC, here's the plan. I had an idea last night, and I was testing it out. And I want your feedback on it. Now, grids we've established are not good. Unless you have like a billion roundabouts, maybe you could make it work. But I had a thought. If we look at this board, what do we notice about this board?
The fact that it is a grid, I'm assuming
It's a grid,
is where you're going.
right?
with
So
that.
so initially, right, it is a grid, which is to say, diagonal lines are the most efficient, obviously. But organizationally, orthogonal lines are going to be the most effective. Now, the other thing I noticed is that this is much wider than it is tall. And as the map expands, the wider portions add much more quickly than the up and down portions. So my thought was, instead of a grid, what if we just did a horizontal line with 3 spaces in between, so the shops can orient any which way they want, and then you just attach things to each horizontal line as is effective. What do you think?
If the problem is many motorways doesn't allow you to designate a one-way street.
Correct.
If you could do that, I think that would clearly be the way to go. I
mean,
I have tried making 2 routes to get to a shop, for example, and the answer usually ends up being clusterfuck.
Right. So the idea is what this does is you have the control of a grid in that only one shop will ever appear between each major road instead of 2. But because you're not vertically gridding yourself, you have the control. So let's say this lower line was feeding a white store and house, and then these reds spawned after. You would be able to shift one color to the higher road and the other color to the lower road to help alleviate the traffic.
Until you get more than 2
Correct.
colors
So
spawned between the roadway.
that's why you're here, sir. That is why you are here. So it does require a little finagling. It requires the starting house and store not to be within line of each other, or within line of each other. So In this case, we have our 3 space, and our next 3 space is going to wait until the top expands. We'll play this through. We'll go as fast as we can. We don't have to go all the way till we die, but just as a thought experiment, we can play around with this.
Okay.
The other trick is we have to claim 30 road tiles every time because you do not have enough road tiles to keep up with the expansion of the map in the beginning. So what to do when a store or house spawns in the middle of a major road when you don't have enough tiles to cover it is the other question. So are we going up or down on this first one?
I would say down, just because of the road tiles you have, and
okay. And what I usually do, I usually go down, rather than connecting the houses directly, I connect the houses
to a cross street. Okay.
Cross street, so that the traffic on the main road is as uninterrupted as possible. So let's give this bad boy a try, see what happens.
You know, I've got a question for you. How have you, what kind of results have you gotten with angled intersections versus squared intersections?
I've been hearing a lot about the makeshift roundabout, doing that. I usually end up doing something like this. So I've done these before, but based on how the AI treats corners, it doesn't seem any faster or slower. I would imagine it's negligible in the long run. But
okay, well that's still 90 degrees either way. What I'm talking about is your first house there directly above your head.
Yeah.
What if you took that at an angle all the way into the main road and not
like that?
The whole thing was a 45 degree. Yes. Is that kind of corner better or worse than a square, a 90-degree corner?
I think it's better in a certain situation. So let's say I had 5 red houses here, and then 1 red house spawns right here. I would probably put the house like that, going with the flow of traffic. And then it's easier for it to turn left and right. It's still going to have the same effect, but it does move faster, I've noticed, through the intersection. So
okay,
that's my thought on that one.
Yeah, I haven't done enough experimenting with that yet to really see, which is why I wanted your opinion on it.
Been butterflying your houses lately. What does that mean? Like what I'm doing here? That's what I usually do. I usually do a 2x2. So I do like that, and then the houses connect to either side of it. Well, that worked out great. Look at that.
It did, but now you have space in between those that isn't going to support another building, and I worry about what's going to spawn in there.
Now, I mean, the occasional house or two, I think, works. So the strength that I would argue for this strategy is a more even distribution of traffic. So rather than trying where everything's isolated and it's highly concentrated densities of single colors, the strategy here is to get a more even spread of mixed colors. So there's no jams. It's an even flow between.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing the experiment. Please, let it run.
Oh, yeah, we'll get it going. So what I'll probably do here is do a road up that way and a road up that way and get those 2 attached just to keep everything good. But we're going to need a lot of road tiles to pull that off. So let's hope. Not quite what we were going for. Now, because I'm doing the 3 space, there is that wiggle room, which does leave room for roundabouts, but we could do traffic lights if you think.
I have not found traffic lights. They are useful in very few situations. I think that the roundabouts are generally superior.
Okay. Then that is what we will stick to. All right, so we're going to pop you there. Right, left. And we'll see what happens with our next spawn. Cha-cha. All right, we got our red there, so we'll connect that in. Don't even have to connect it that way if we don't want to. Get that one over. And we're probably going to get our top line, and this is where we start running out of tiles, is because of the need to add new highways. It's a big investment initially. Now, there is the strategy where you can do the dotted line approach, which uses half as many roads. But once something attaches to it, you don't really have a say in the matter.
Right, but right now you don't. For instance, you don't need the upper line as far to the east as it goes.
Right. So that was a close one. If that was one higher up, we would have had a problem there. All right, and now we have our first crossover situation. So let's get to Monday, and then we will decide how we want to approach this. All right. I'm assuming we're going to need a bridge because we are building over rivers. So we'll get that.
Okay.
All right. So
Besides, you still have a roundabout in your back pocket, so.
So we can get our dotted line going here. Just so we have at least it guarded off. Now our blues, and this is kind of what I was talking about before. Now we could start doing some finagly stuff. Or we can just attach them and let them sort it out for themselves.
Okay, Sinister, that's about what I've been doing, which is why I was wondering. Oh, I didn't see the blue ones down there.
That's the question. It's what to do with these blue ones. We could swing them out to over here on their own road, or we can just let them intermingle.
Why not bring the exit from the red subdivision, if you want to call it that, a block to the west?
Right, so that would be this approach, which is
something like that.
One of the strategies I had considered myself. So I would concur. A good idea. Oh, see, now this is the strength of this strategy.
Wow,
is
that
the forced
actually worked really well.
And even if it spawned here, let's say, right? It could have spawned here. We have the option to just jump in there and then carry these up here, right? So that's what I was saying. If you only force the horizontal and you allow yourself to be as flexible as you need to be with the vertical, it allows you to direct traffic in a pretty optimal way.
I want to see how this continues to work when you add about 2 more colors to this, but so far I really like the idea.
It really is dependent on how many tiles you can get. That's for sure. All right, so with purple here, I think motorway would be the best solution, where we can tack it on to this side here. But I guess for now, no harm. And actually, we could even maybe try to scurry it that way, because there's a little less traffic in that direction. Oof, it's not helping, purple. It's not helping. Yeah, so now we got one going left, one going right. They're right behind you, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, what we could do now with this spawn.
Yes, I gotcha.
We could do that. I think that'll work. And that'll force them up. Yeah. So that forces them up, and there's only the 2 teal houses right now. That'll get messier as time goes on. Again, what I was saying before too with the 3-way is because we've spaced this 3 and not 2, it does give you that option to insert motorway or roundabouts in a lot of the spots where normal grids you can't, right?
Okay.
But the question is, does it break down at about the 750 mark? Because like you said, once you have 4 colors, how messy does it get?
That's going to depend on each run, yeah.
All right, so now we have another color meshing in. So now this top highway is getting very messy. We're also very close to expanding to our 4th highway down on the bottom. So it could be an opportunity for white to go down the bottom and up, which might be what we do. It is practically...
For the moment, I guess you try and run white across the bottom route. Yeah, because you don't want to run it across the top where you've already got 2 colors running.
Yeah, and it's almost the next week, so we can actually let this run out. And
Gonna have to. I don't think you have enough road.
We do not have
Actually,
enough road. That's like I said. The problem is if you don't get enough 30s in the first 4 weeks, the strategy doesn't work, and this is not helping. So I think we're gonna take the cheat here, and we're just gonna motorway for now and try to bank up some more. Try to bank up some more roads as time goes on here. Oh well, thank you. That's real helpful. The house spawned right under where the roadway attached, so I have to wait for that to despawn, attach the house, and then reattach the motorway. Oh man! All right, our reds have expanded. There we go. So red is uninterrupted. Blue is almost uninterrupted except for one purple junction. We now have a red here, which is also not terrible because that can go straight up. So far, traffic going well. Should probably like flip my camera or something. I don't know. I'll just move myself over here. Looking the wrong way. All right, we got pink. So what's good about this is that pink...
Where's the pink house?
Is right behind my head.
Gotcha.
So what's good about this is that only red is on this road. So pink and red mingling here, blue and purple mingling here, right? And so this is the hypothesized strength.
Well, it does have technique. The blues heading against it on that first little chunk, but it's just two houses. That shouldn't be a big problem.
So we're going to hope
and technically the last intersection with the purples, so...
Yeah. Oh, geez. Pink is not happy. We'll probably do this, I think. That's going to be the most... And then we can try to get white in on something there, too. But, hey, 30 road tiles. All right. So let's try to sort this out real fast. Is that going to be enough? We need to... Oh, we have to super bridge here. How do we want to super bridge here? Is that bad? That's not bad. I think this calls for a roundabout. That attaches to there. And wonder if even pink could go down the lower route too. That would probably help, right? We could actually... Yeah, what do you got?
Can you leave white just using its motorway and just take pink down the southern route?
I want to kind of save the motorway for emergency, so kind of as a stress test to this whole operation, see if this even holds, and then that would give us some good feedback going forward. So we have no spare tiles right now, so again, the getting 30 tiles each time is quite important to the early strategy.
Okay, blue just upgraded. There's another blue house.
Mm-hmm. And then even if blue and purple get congested, we can shoot blue up to the top, right? And that'll alleviate. So if this starts getting a little too congested with purple, oh, well, that's, hello. Yes, please.
That was nice.
It was very nice. So we got a couple more whites spawning in here, as always, being a bit of a problem, but can't say no to that. We'll wait for some more roads on the next week, but all right, so this is getting a bit congested here. So I think we're going to shoot blue up to try to alleviate that. So as soon as we hit Monday, 30 road tiles, just what we needed. All right, so we're going to have to start making this an actual highway. I guess that will need to connect. Actually, no, because we have the two here. Harving's that, so that should actually work in our favor. White is okay. I'm not sure what we're going to do with white here. Bit of a problem, but should hold for now. just carry these out. I guess we can stagger this for now. And then these go up. All right, well, that's all our road tiles. Let's go another week or two, and again, we don't have to like prove anything right now. This is just kind of a mystery mix-up. But we'll get to a point where our curiosity is satisfied and call it there. I'm fine with that.
It's not terrible.
Looks like we're going to have to get the pinks to a second jump there. So blue's perfectly happy. Purple is saturated. Pink is keeping up. Red is okay. We've got another blue here. So what we could do, actually, let's see. We drop this like that for now. This pink should be okay because blue's off of this road now. Might do a side road for it eventually.
Oh, that one pink house.
Yeah, it might actually behoove us to isolate pink to the highway. That might be the best way to do it. $30 road tiles. All right, we're finally getting our road tiles here. All right, so we got to chop these up. I could probably split these up too, since we're not really using them yet. So my thought here, since we're starting to get a little congested with white and pink, right, is we could, let's see where, this is where purple comes in. White passes through, pink crosses. So what if we pop pink here and motorway pink? Let's see. Motorway pink from here to here.
Instead of hooking it up there, why not hook it up between the two pink stores?
Because white has to cross.
Right, but white is still going to cross with the pinks headed for the southern store as it is. If you put it between the two stores, they'll be able to turn both ways coming out of the motorway and come back from both ways.
Like that?
No, put it on your north-south street that you've made for the second one.
Okay.
No, down 3 blocks and right 1 from there.
There?
Down 1. There. You're not at an intersection. The pinks, they're still going to have to cross the road that white is on.
Right.
But I don't see a way to avoid that.
Hmm.
I mean, they have to cross it one way or the other.
Correct.
This way you just get, half of your pinks are going to be able to split off and never interact with white.
What we need is another motorway is what we need. Or another roundabout.
Hang on. Instead of putting the motorway there, kill that idea for a second. What if you run both the whites to the northern route that blue is using, but you run it just between the whites, and you run the motorway for white?
So we're going to leave pink in the mix. We're going to run white up.
And then you stick the motorway somewhere in the middle of those two.
So that'll be there to there, I'd imagine. We should probably do it that way so houses don't spawn in there, right? All right, so then...
And then you put the other end somewhere in the middle of all the whites.
Well, I have it here, so that whites are going to go... Unless you want to isolate the whites?
Well, no, it's behind your head. I can't see where it is.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm also thinking the pinks are coming back through that neighborhood, so you want to put it somewhere that it's not going to interfere with them.
Correct. So we can do something like that.
Yeah, except I will say not right in the intersection. I've noticed that putting motorways into any kind of intersection always seems to go bad. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So pink is going this way with purple. White no longer going that way. So I guess the question is, do we even still need the roundabout? I guess we will in the future, depending what spawns to the left.
You will, let's see, I'm trying to think if you, no, you want pink on that road. I was thinking you could take all the pinks north to where the others are and run them on the north road, but that one's already,
Yeah.
well, you took, I take
purple
it back.
and
Most of the, hang on, how is light blue getting to the second factory?
This one?
Yeah.
These guys.
Ooh, okay.
And they've got a clear
You're
path.
just relying on them to keep it clear. All right.
Yeah, there's 3.
I got you.
And they only have to, they don't even, actually they don't interact with, they interact with purple just going in.
Okay.
So, yeah. Looks good for now. And we still have 9 roads left. So, the 30s have been coming through here. It does, Twisted Indy. It does. Slash Roth, welcome in, by the way. We are in Eastern time. Oh, hello. All right, well, the segregation lasted as long as it could. We could technically build another highway across the top and thread white up that way, which we could probably do in the future, but not right now because we don't have the tiles for it.
Yeah, you've got, what the heck is that? I'm looking at the pink car on the northern roadway.
This one?
Yeah, it took the motorway up and it's going around to get to that pink shop.
Yeah, I mean, that might be, that's actually the fastest route.
Okay, that's not the route we wanted it on, though, is the problem.
No, so what we would have to do then is that. And that'll alleviate
that
traffic.
might be, but yeah, I don't know.
Then pink goes down, white goes up, and they never interact, other than getting on and off.
Well, except white's just going to go down and also. It'll go up if it's going to the right-hand store, but to the left-hand store, it'll go down.
Oh, you're right.
The only other way to try and change that is to move the end that's over in the white subdivision somewhere that it's more inconvenient for pink to get to. You'd have to move it onto that southern road and down.
I mean, we
Don't think it's
could
worth it.
technically, because white's always going to be connected because of pink. So we could actually isolate white entirely. Oh, shit. Well, we lose. Okay. I right-clicked on the motorway, so now we lose.
Maybe not lose, but it's going to be close, yeah. Oh, no, you're going to lose the newer shop.
Yep, we're dead. Gotta love that. One-click death.
Yeah, this game needs an undo button. It really needs an undo button.
Control-Z. Control-Z. Wait! There's hope. There's hope. We'll see what happens. These need to connect
you
in.
can get people there in time. Maybe those, if you can attach those guys, maybe they can save it.
Maybe. So it's definitely not the best system, but it's oh geez, purple. So now we're definitely going to need that 4th highway after Monday. Looks like white survived, so we're good. But we are going to have to see what happens with purple here. We're going to have to probably find... Yeah, there's no good
you're
way...
You're going to have to hook him up to something now, or we're going to die before... Well, maybe not before Monday.
Yeah, we got Monday coming up.
Immediately.
All right, looks like motorway is going to be the answer there. So we have been given this to connect those, which means this doesn't even need to connect to that anymore. I would like to start one of the two So this is the bottom, right? The map doesn't expand south beyond this line. So we could actually hold off on this horizontal here.
I'll take your word for it. I don't know.
So let's focus on
I mean, for
this
now
then.
it doesn't, but
So we're going to fish these up into our vertical. And I guess they can go here. Well, we don't have enough tiles, so we'll have to make it count. Let's see. Ba-da-dum.
what was that line?
It happens. My fingers get excited. All right. So that'll help keep white out of the way of blue, which is always good. Blue should have an uninterrupted line now. Well, my curiosity is satisfied. I think there's something to this.
And where are we? Well, that's an easy fix.
We're approaching 500, yeah. So.
It's certainly something worth playing around with. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's inconvenient.
The white?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not terrible, but that's not great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're going to get a whole civilization out there, that's a problem.
Yeah. But I think there's something to this. Obviously, you're going to need some semblance of roundabouts to avoid these congestions. But overall, I think there's something.
The other big problem is just that the game is so dependent upon what you get.
Correct.
Yesterday, I ran Tokyo, and I ended Tokyo at about 1,500 because the game had given me 2 motorways all game. I took every motorway it gave me, and I got 2.
You will only get so far with 2 motorways, for sure.
Yeah, I got 82 days or something, but with 2 motorways, you're just not getting any further. And I did a lot of griping about it during the stream, too. So.
All right, so this is now problematic. So I think we're going to have to connect these two. This blue not helping at all. And that's going to disrupt purple a little bit, but hopefully not too much. So, yeah. I think and maybe 3's not the right size. Maybe it's 4, maybe it's 2, right? So there's...
Well, 2, every building would be forced to spawn. First of all, you need a lot more roads.
You would need a lot more roads for 2, but
it would. But the buildings would all spawn in hooked to one road or the other. The problem with that is you don't get a choice anymore about where it might be.
Correct.
It's gonna attach to something.
So I think we round about here because this is the tough spot, and maybe even motorway into that.
I guess my question is, before you put the motorway in there, why? You're actually taking it away from the white shops.
Because it flows traffic better. So the cars coming off the motorway, I guess it's about the same effect, isn't it? Because they'll come in and they either go right or left. Yeah, it's about the same effect. You're right. Good call. This is why you're here. This is why you're here. We got reds on the south, so we kind of self-fulfill that prophecy of the Southern Highway.
Okay, they are both red. I thought it was a red and a pink at first.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I think early game, it's definitely about motorways and 30 tiles so that you can afford to do what you need to do. And then after that, I think it might be roundabouts so you can start alleviating traffic as it occurs. Oh, well, that's delightful. Guess we'll move you there. Just chop you straight up. These pinks are being a problem, which is always good. And they're gonna need to connect thusly.
And there, well, you're gonna need one more road tile back because now you got another white building.
Oh yeah, look at that, lovely. I got pink.
And your light
I got
blues
pink
are
over here.
not making it.
It's all going to pot. All right, so we got pink in here. That'll help a little bit. The white motorway then needs to. I guess it stays. We're pretty fucked. I think we'll just call it quits. But yeah, there you have it. GG's.
It's a, well, interesting idea.
It's a thought. And like I said, the question is 3 the right size? Is it 4? Is it 2? Is it 6? Right, like an idea.
And sometimes, at some point, you may have to accept that this plan has failed. What do you try and shift to?
Correct.
And see if you live through it. Although, frankly, once your city starts to get developed, changing the entire road network usually means you're not living through it.
Right, and I think that's the advantage of that is any changes you would make in that setup would just be minor vertical changes. You wouldn't have to. You're not restructuring anything horizontally. You just have motorways you put in and connect things either up or down. So, yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, I can see issues. But,
Well, I'm successfully mixed up on the midstream mix-up. So
that was definitely mixed.
I'm gonna step away for 10 seconds, maybe 20. But I will be right back, and we'll continue the talk show.
All right. Well, I will take the opportunity to step away as well.
Okay. You feel a band, Diablo Bob? I should have put the break screen up. Should have done one of these. Should have popped this one up. Then you can. We'll wait for CC to get back. You like the chair crackle? I was actually trying to fix it this morning. It's getting louder. I don't know what's causing it. I don't know if it's the center piston or where it connects to the wood. It's hard to tell, but we'll figure it out. All right. Well, it's been a delightful picking of your brain. The harvest has been bountiful. I will, in fairness, I hand the reins to you. Take this crazy train for a spin. Any direction you want to go, feel free.
We have a few ideas.
Oh, the
Don't
black
worry,
book.
It's not the whole book. It's
I'm
only
in the
about
black book.
Yeah, right. You're in the generic notes. Well, not generic, but that's what the book is. It's either that or else one of the many piles of index cards that sit around my office.
Ah, I see.
I live with those things. Wow. How weird do we want to get? That is a good question. Let's start with not too weird.
Okay.
Entertainment or entertainment media. Books, TV, movies, or add live performance to that, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Which ones, yes or no, and why?
All right.
And for the question of live performance, we'll ignore the current risks associated with.
The books, I can't do books that stimulate imagination, because I will take, like, as I'm reading, the story will start to go in my own world, and then I turn the page, and the next line I read makes no sense, because the last page and a half I've just made up in my own brain, and whatever words my eyeballs were telling my brain's like, yeah, that's great, no, we got it from here, we're good. And then I have to, like, go back and, like, resort out what actually happened and what I just made up while reading. So most of my reading is more restricted to analytical, philosophical logic rather than anything more imaginative. I do very much get inspired musically when it comes to imagination. So my ideas for TV shows, screenplays, even just little scenes, mostly comes to me from music. I think for movies, it's all about reflection. My favorite movies are the ones that either are a perfect mirror to how I see the world, or shatter that mirror and show the world from a completely different angle that I can still get on board with.
Okay.
I think not for me specifically, but I think a lot of people really clung on to Joaquin Phoenix's Joker in that respect, where it's just a different way of looking. It's a way a lot of people look at society, but is not often spoken, right? I usually go from the more positive. I wouldn't call it positive nihilism, but like almost like a foolish optimism. The world's fucked, but you still have hope anyway, kind of a thing. It's almost the opposite of nihilism. It's like recognizing the nihilism as correct and then fighting it, rather than fighting the nihilism, but inevitably knowing it wins out in the end, right? Mostly it's usually international films. So if you look at things like Rangrak Noinid Nasan is a Thai film. The two main characters is a Japanese man and a Thai woman. And they meet because the Thai woman's sister commits suicide and the Japanese man's a witness to it. And the Japanese man speaks broken Thai and the Thai woman speaks broken Japanese, and they both speak broken English better than they speak each other's languages. And trying to get two people whose worlds have been shattered to communicate, find common ground, and move through life through those broken phrases. The artistry of that is so powerful, and it's hard not to identify it because of the broken language, everything is boiled down to its core element. And I can sum up the whole movie with the 2 lines of dialogue. It's kind of at the turning point, right before the turning point. So like things have hit rock bottom and now they're starting to bounce back up. And the Japanese man says to the Thai woman, "Are you sad?" Because they're in a very intimate moment and they're trying to look forward, but the weight of the world is still on them. And so the Japanese guy says, "Are you sad?" And the Thai woman responds, "Everybody's sad." And it's just like, oh, right? It's just those 2 lines, so simple, but they're so boiled down. And like, no one can't relate to that. It's like, life is not about asking if someone's sad or not, because everyone is sad. That's not what matters. That's just a common ground we all have. What matters is above the sadness, right? Like it sounds like a really depressing, nihilistic view of the world, but when you actually break down what it means, it's saying stop worrying about the sadness. Everyone's sad. It's not worth our energy or our time. We just have to accept it as part of life. What matters is the things that are not sad, right? And it's just like, oh, stuff like that. I love it.
I get that viewpoint, but by the same token, you have to acknowledge the sad. You have to fight the sad.
Right.
You don't just say it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the sad isn't. Sad isn't. I don't know. It's not something you were born with. You weren't born sad.
Sure.
You know, you weren't born with bald spot or a big nose or a what. Well, you were born with it. Well, I wasn't born with the bald spot, but yeah, close enough. My hairline started receding at about 17, so. But yeah, sad is there. Happy is there. A whole bunch of things are there all the time, and you focus on what you focus on. But that doesn't mean that you don't address the problem.
Right.
If you don't address the problem, it never gets any better.
Mm-hmm.
You may never get rid of the sad at all, but you can cut the sad down. You can shrink it.
Yeah, for sure.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that question was supposed to be multi-part, and you pretty much stomped out the rest, which was going to be, like what genres of things, and you kind of covered all that. So good answer.
I can extrapolate further too.
No, I think you pretty much settled that.
Well, you had mentioned live entertainment.
And television. I mean, do you watch any of those?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of musicals that are done well. Even like small productions, like college level productions, can be done really well. I think You're in Town, University of Delaware, might have been my favorite live production musical I've seen, just because the actors did such a good job with it. It was really well done. Like, especially with that musical, like the set does not need to blow you away. The music doesn't need to be, some city's Philharmonic Orchestra, right? It's just the actors themselves can carry that kind of a show, and they did very well in that. And then long form improv. I saw a troupe that had visited the city I was in that did long form improv. So all they really do is take like 3 or 4 suggestions from the audience at the very beginning. And it's just a giant weaving of tales for the whole night. So they have like planned formats, so they know like what games they're going to play in the improv, but each game is like 10 minutes long, and they kind of have whatever their launching point is, and they slowly weave it in. So my favorite example was they had done a couple isolated bits, and then all 4 of them came on to the stage, and they had a chair, and the first chair introduced himself as one of the suggestions from the crowd, like related to that suggestion. The second person introduced himself as the second suggestion, the third, the fourth. And they start to tell their stories. So the first guy would be like, I went out to the grocery store and I brought my dog along with me, and we found a small tree branch on the side of the road that the dog just would not let go, and he took it to the grocery store. And then the second person's talking about how he was trying to deliver flowers to a house and he was running late and everything was going wrong that day. And then the third person, the fourth person. And then as they continue to tell their narratives, their stories start interweaving. So the dog runs out into the street and the guy driving the flower truck has to slam on the brakes, and then they get into an argument. Then the third guy is the guy that ends up breaking up the argument. And the fourth guy is the police guy who just got fired from his job. And and it was the way they combined it was crazy, because it was like things weren't time sensitive or period sensitive. So, like, one guy you thought was a medieval wizard, but because he's in the same timeline as these other people, it turns out he's just like a Renaissance fair nut, right? And he's not actually a wizard. He doesn't actually have any powers, and he's just crazy. And so, like, the way that they have to force the stories together when they come from completely different origins is just, the way they did it was so good. And I've seen a lot of short-term improv, and it's all kind of the same gimmicks over and over again. But the long term, there's a certain skill in storytelling, and storytelling is always going to win out in the end for me.
Oh, good improv is truly a treasure.
And so the long form improv specifically, I'm always going to have a special place in my heart.
Okay. All right, we're going to go a little dark on this one. Yep. All right, we all know that there's a couple of things that are inevitable in life, and one of them is the end, death. After you die, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want to be remembered for?
That's always a good question. I've often thought if I became financially successful to create investments for projects where basically, you look at certain humanitarians and whatnot that will take $2 million, they put it into an account, and the interest on the account is donated to the homeless of a city or something every year, right? So I've always thought it would be nice to construct gardens from scratch that are very museum, artistic, sculpture grounds oriented. So getting plants that are very scientifically interesting, either individually or how they interact with other plants and animals, and creating gardens that accentuate and exhibit those characteristics, and having them be publicly available, and then obviously having some kind of investment strategy to ensure that those are retained through time. So I've always thought of something like a garden or something like that can carry a lineage with it, with people sharing the same passions, keeping it going from generation to generation. You look at stuff like England's the Royal Society, right? It's just kind of a fraternity of historical scientific preservation. And, as it goes through the generations, it reiterates itself, but it has that lineage of fraternity through it. And something like that, I always thought would be really interesting to create. Well, there are lethal gardens, which is one I would always like to create, where basically it's just all the horrific plants in the world put into one garden. Then you do not touch anything.
That one I was looking it up. The Ainwick Garden in England.
Yes.
That's the big one.
It's got all the deadly plants in it. But there's a lot of orchids that have a lot of unique interactions with insects. So it'd be cool to do even an inside kind of a display like that. There's plants that interact with each other. So actually the largest herbaceous flower that's 3 feet wide only has a small little plant. And the way it supports itself is it's a plant that leaches onto trees. So you would have the host trees, and you'd have the parasitic flower, and stuff like that, where you can accentuate both the artistry of constructing a garden aesthetically, while using that allure of the aesthetic to generate curiosity into the scientific.
Well, we could use more people interested in science and the scientific right now. There's just there's a lot of, that's not important. And can't say I agree with it.
Right. But I mean, and it's weird because we have such potent examples to counter it, right? Like the space race. Why was the space race so important? What's so great about landing on the moon? What do we need to know about the moon that's going to help us? Well, your pediatric mat, what is it called? The mattresses with the super foam that came out of the space program. Your
so much stuff came out of
anti-gravity
space.
pens, developments in shielding electronics from interference, photography, radio transmission, like the scientific advancements just our country alone made, let alone the world made. Just attacking the challenge.
Yeah, but I think that's what a lot of people don't like about that is not that we've made these advancements. It's that we made these advancements and now everybody gets the benefit of it.
Yeah, exactly. What's wrong with that?
And they're like, well, we invented this. We should get it. It's like,
but we did get it.
no, yeah, we did, but
Yeah.
they want it to be only us.
Right.
That's not the way.
That's the whole trickle down economics, I thought. Isn't that their thing? Is the trickle down is we have it and then it spreads to everyone else. And then it starts spreading to everyone else. And they're like, no, I don't want it to spread to everyone else. It's like, but you said trickle down. What do you... That was literally the plan.
Not sure it works quite the same way on the international stage, but I do get your point.
Yeah. It's like, that's why, give and take anything you could say for and against Tesla as a company and the people in charge. Making all the patents public, like releasing patent holds on the technology.
Yeah.
That only benefits everyone. And I'm glad there are companies willing to demonstrate that, because if a competitor improves on their product to make a better product, they can do the same. They can say, oh, that is a better way to do it. We'll do it that way too, right? Like no one's losing there. You're making a better product. So I was actually watching a documentary this morning while I ate breakfast on the Scottish Highlands, the northeastern, the Falk Islands, I think.
Okay.
They are the world leaders in renewable energy experimentation. So,
did not know that.
Because it's always windy there, and it's all islands, so you have all these very high density tidal channels between the islands, because when the tide goes out, it has to go throughout all the inlets, so it's all focused.
Right.
And then when it comes in, it goes the other direction. So they, on average, produce 130% of their country's demand, or their region's demand. And they can't even export it because the infrastructure connecting to the mainland of Scotland isn't strong enough. And in order to upgrade it, it's going to cost like some portion of $1 billion. So what they're doing instead is they're increasing local demand for energy by turning like the ferries strictly electric, all the cars strictly electric, like getting everything to be electric so that they can increase their own demand. And then they can transfer, it basically pays for itself. So right. They match their own demand in the short term, which then increases their production, which then gives them enough energy to guarantee a certain level of output, which will pay for the project up front.
I like it. I mean, obviously it's something that's very dependent on their local
right.
geography and geology. It's not something you can apply anywhere.
Right. But that's how the world has to work.
Lessons can be learned and exported.
Like right now, you look at oil, right? Oil is localized where oil is. You've got Russia, Middle East, Alaska. Like that's where the oil is. Argentina. This is no different. It's localized where the renewable energy is. The sunniest spots, Sahara Desert. The windiest spots, northern and southern extremes of continents. Islands are the tidal spots, and then we just have to build the infrastructure to transport the product, just like we have for oil. We have oil pipelines, we can have electrical pipelines, right? It's the same thing, just better.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Lighter topic.
All right. This is going to finish us out as we're hitting that 2-hour mark.
Are we? Oh, okay.
But we still have Q&A. The Q&A wide open. We don't have to kick you to the curb just yet.
For them, I'm not going. Oh, let's see. We did. Yeah, we're just going with the light topic here. Favorite snack or snacks? Doesn't have to be junk food. Just it's the middle of the day. It's not time for dinner yet. What the heck do you feel like?
Yeah. The family heritage is potato chips. Me, my mom, anyone on my mom's side. There's, as we say every day, an open bag is an empty bag. The bag does not make it back to the cabinet. You just pass it to the next person.
Well, that's a little worse when I don't have another person around here. So
that's usually an end of the night snack, though. That's not usually a midday snack. I've been kind of starting my days off fruit heavy. Been doing that for a while now. Used to be more like apples and citrus. Recently it's been more bananas and berries with yogurt. But I don't know if I would say banana as a snack. I know lately, since I've moved to North Carolina, my snack has been English muffins with peanut butter, because that's a good one. Sometimes I'll do like just butter and salt, but English muffins with peanut butter is a good snack. And now that I'm in the country, sweet tea and pimento cheese spread. I will probably be snacking on that quite frequently. My uncle's from Houston, so you can somewhat relate. Not quite.
Sorry to hear that too.
But
I grew up there.
So he makes his own pimento cheese spread and his own firecrackers, and it's certainly an addiction that has been passed on. So it's nice being in pimento cheese country. So I'll be snacking on that for a while. I may get sick of it. I may move on, but for now I'll indulge myself. It's something different.
It is that, I gotta say. Not a flavor that I've ever picked up.
And it's definitely a taste. And that's what's fun about being in this area is like the store I'm going to be working at is they have their own pimento cheese they make in-house, and it's very pimento pepper forward. Like it's more pepper than cheese, which some people I would imagine like. And then we have like Bojangles, which is very cheese forward, cream forward, but they also have jalapeno in there to give a little more pepper to it. And so if you like the more creamy cheesy side, you do the Bojangles. If you like the pepperier side, you do those. Or you can mix them and you get an entirely different experience. And it's like I get to explore. It's gonna be so fun.
Fair enough. Hey, I'm all behind the hot pepper cheese. All behind the hot pepper anything.
Such a shock hearing that from you and your lineage of stream. Did you ever get through those chocolates, by the way?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we finished those, and it took them about 4 months. They finally got them back in stock in July, and it's like, I am not ordering chocolate to be delivered to Texas in July.
No.
If they still have them in stock like mid-October, I'll consider ordering some more. Until then, it's just I will get a package full of soup. It's just not going to work.
There's plenty of other options for hot stuff.
There are. The problem is I've found out through the hot sauce stuff that I've had to stop. Most of them use pepper extract.
They don't taste good,
and they taste bad.
Yep.
They just taste bad.
That's my biggest problem. Is I love hot food, but it has to taste good. That's why I don't like a lot. Like people are surprised when I say I don't like vindaloo curry because I like hot stuff. They're like, why do you like vindaloo curry? I was like, because the taste is awful. I will take a yellow curry over vindaloo curry every time. I hate the flavor of vindaloo. It's not good. Sorry.
Fair enough.
It needs to taste good first and then be hot.
It's very dependent on the restaurant, and I have not been able to find a good place around here in ages.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Cool. Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude the first episode of season 4 of Losing Our Marbles, a talk for two. CCKinnison, thank you so much for being here. It's been fantastic conversation. Great way to start the season off.
Having me on.
Ender's in the chat. He's going to be here next week. Woo. So look out for that.
Cool.
Anything you'd like to
Now
promote?
you have some idea of what to expect.
Anything you'd like to promote coming up on the stream or in life in general?
Oh, jeez. Not really. Tomorrow I expect to be back streaming with the new season.
Woo.
And gonna keep doing what I do.
I will try to expedite.
I've got a couple of breaks and outside of the stream activities that are going to keep me occupied for chunks of October and November. So I'm not really looking to make any big changes to the way I run the stream until we get close to the holidays. Gotcha. After Thanksgiving.
I'll try to have the 1 hour check up as soon as close to the launch of season as possible. I do have a hair appointment later in the afternoon, but if the season's live before then, I can get it up before then. Hopefully I can hit the test to upload button, go to the haircut, come back, and then it'll be done when I get back. That would be ideal. But we'll see what happens.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Cool stuff. So be sure to look out. Both streams. Good stuff coming. Thank you all for being here. We will open to Q&A, but you have to be here live. That doesn't make it to YouTube. Sorry. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you got to get here live every Tuesday. This season, whatever the season, not the marble season, the talk show season. You'll figure it out.
How long is the talk show season?
We generally go for 12 episodes. Last season ended at 11. We didn't make it to 12, but they're generally
so
12
marble
weeks.
Seasons.
Currently, yes. Currently, it's 3 marble seasons long. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you again, CCKinnison, and we'll see you next time. Bye.